I spent over 2 years trying to heal my anxiety and my chronic stress using a lot of different modalities like therapy, journaling, shadow work, EFT, meditation, mindset work, everything. I've tried everything, really. I became quite self-aware. So from my mind, I really understood why I was the way I was, but I still felt unable to feel better, to feel in my body better, and to prevent anxiety from happening until I started studying the universe. It wasn't until I understood the nervous system as part of a somatic yoga certification I was doing that everything's starting to click for me. And that's why now I'm so passionate about helping women understand their nervous system, work with their body via somatic tools and somatic sequences and exercises so they can heal their nervous system, come out of a survival state, and start reclaiming their life. Because once you understand what's really happening in your nervous system, you stop trying to fix yourself and you start speaking a language that your body actually understands. In this video, I'm breaking down the essential nervous system concepts that will finally make sense of why you still feel anxious, exhausted, numb, even after all the personal development work you have done. And I'm explaining it, or I'm trying to explain it in plain English without any jargon, so you can actually understand what your body needs from you. Let's go. So I'm going to really oversimplify what the nervous system is by saying it's like a security system that's constantly scanning for danger. And it's scanning for dangers on three levels. First of all, inside your body, then by looking at your environment, and then by looking at what's happening between your body and the environment, meaning what's happening with the people around you in your space. This scanning is happening below your conscious awareness, and it's something that we call neuroception. If you only remember one thing from this video, it is that your nervous system always prioritizes what is familiar. Because for your nervous system, same equal safe. Even if what is familiar is a situation you want to get out of. So even if familiar is living in anxiety, living in toxic relationships, living with chronic stress, because your nervous system will always choose a familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven. So this is why you keep looping back to the same patterns, even though you have enough self-awareness to know better. And it doesn't mean that your nervous system is broken. It doesn't mean that there is anything wrong with you. You don't have to be ashamed or to keep beating yourself up because you are not able to change the way you want to change. It's just that your nervous system is acting in an unconscious way, and it's following outdated programming that once kept you safe. So the thing to remember is that your nervous system's job is to keep you safe. So if you're still here today, if you're still alive, that means so far your nervous system has been really successful at doing its job. And so for any situation that happened in the past where you were facing a potential danger, whatever technique or method your nervous system used to keep you safe while you were facing that situation was successful because you're still here today. So that means that now every time you're gonna be facing a similar situation, your nervous system is gonna go, oh, we faced that in the past and we used that particular technique and it worked. So let's do that again. I also want to explain this is not set in stone, right? I'm not saying that your nervous system will be stuck in those ways forever. But when something triggers your nervous system, it goes into a survival state. And when you go into a survival state, you lose the ability to think creatively, different ways of doing things. And this is all good when you are in a real dangerous situation where you need to think fast and act fast. But what's happening nowadays is we actually spend a lot of our time in survival state during the day when we actually are not in any danger. And so this prevents us from accessing higher and better ways of resolving issues. Because when we are in a survival state, our nervous system is not gonna lose energy trying to think of a better way of approaching that danger or threat that is in front of us, because there is just no time for that. So as we mentioned before, your nervous system is scanning through 3 different places constantly. So it's scanning on the inside, meaning what's happening in your organs, in your muscles, and the sensation that you're feeling. Then it's also scanning on the outside, so what's happening in your immediate environment and in the larger world around you. And then it's scanning on an in-between level, meaning between you and other people around you. And this is all on a body level. And when it picks up a cue of danger, we call that a trigger. When it picks up on a cue of safety, we call that a glimmer. And your nervous system will always choose the familiar pattern, even if it's not healthy, over an unfamiliar one, even if this unfamiliar is good for you. Because predictability feels safer than change, than the unknown. And this is why we stay in our comfort zone even if it doesn't feel good, right? It's really hard to get out of our comfort zone because the unknown is scary. We don't know what could happen in the unknown. We don't know what could happen if we switch job, if we move to a different city, if we start a new relationship. But we know our present and actual situation. We know what it brings us. Even if it doesn't bring us happiness, at least we know that. So let's talk about polyvagal theory. Dr. Stephen Porges is the author of the polyvagal theory. He's a psychologist and a neuroscientist, and this theory that he came up with totally revolutionized the way we understand the nervous system. And let's see why. Before the polyvagal theory, we thought that the nervous system only had 2 branches. So the parasympathetic branch, also known as rest and digest, and the sympathetic branch, also known as fight or flight. It was quite simple. It was binary. You're either stressed or you're relaxed. But this way of seeing the nervous system didn't really explain why it's much more complicated than that. Sometimes we are stressed and it leads to a shutdown, a freeze, and a freeze could be interpreted as a rest state because you're not active, you're not mobilized, but you could still be stressed and shut down. We couldn't explain why some people would just freeze instead of either fighting or fleeing, which are the 2 options of the sympathetic state when they are in a stressful situation. It couldn't explain those feelings of being disconnected and feeling numb that we see in so many people in modern life. So what Porges discovered is that the parasympathetic state, the rest and digest state, actually has 2 different functions. One of them is the ventral vagal pathway, and this is your safety and social connection state. And then there is also a dorsal vagal pathway, and this is your shutdown and conservation state. This discovery was groundbreaking because it gave us a framework to understand why many experiences didn't fit the old model of you're either stressed or relaxed. Porges also brought on a nuance with that polyvagal theory, that is, that our nervous system isn't always looking to respond to a threat, but it's constantly going through a process of analyzing danger vs safety. And that process is called neuroception, which we already mentioned earlier in the video. Another really important point with that theory is that it showed that social connection isn't just a nice thing to have, it's actually a biological imperative for survival for humans. It also showed that we have a predictable hierarchy of responses to threat, which he mapped in something that we call the Polyvagal Ladder, that we will see a bit later. This ladder shows us exactly how our nervous system moves through different states, different survival states, and most importantly, why we get stuck. So on top of the ladder, we have the ventral vagal state, which is a state of being safe and social. It's a state where we feel calm, present, and able to engage with life. Then in the middle of the ladder, we have the sympathetic state, which is the fight or flight. And when we are there, we usually feel anxious, activated, wired, and we are mobilized for action. At the bottom of the ladder, we have the dorsal vagal. So this is the shutdown state. And when we are there, we usually feel numb, disconnected, collapse, like we are not really here in the present. What's really important to understand is that a healthy nervous system moves up and down the ladder many times a day. So, for example, you go down to a sympathetic state when you need energy before a workout or because you need to meet a deadline. And you go down to dorsal when you need deep rest and sleep. And then you move back up to ventral when the challenge has passed, when you don't need to be in sympathetic or dorsal anymore. The problem isn't in moving down the ladder. The problem appears when we get stuck into one of the lower states of the ladder, and that's what we will call a dysregulated nervous system, when the nervous system isn't able to flow and move through different states but gets stuck in one state and doesn't really know how to get out of that state anymore, or hasn't got the necessary tools to move out from that state. So let's quickly see what each state of this ladder looks like in daily life. When we are on the top of the ladder in a ventral vagal state, what it might look like emotionally is that you feel calm, grounded, present, you're connected to yourself and to others, you're feeling hopeful, creative, curious, open. What it feels like in your body is an ease. You're able to connect to your breathing in a deeper way. You're relaxed. For example, your shoulders and jaw are not clenched. You have a good digestion. Face feels soft and expressive. What you can do when you're in that state is that you can think clearly, you can make good decisions, you can connect authentically with others, and you can feel joy and pleasure, be creative, and learn new things easily. So an example of what it might look like in daily life is having a meaningful conversation where you feel truly seen by the other. It might be laughing with a friend. It might be feeling grateful, being absorbed in creative work when you're in a deep focus state. And it can be just feeling at ease in your body. This state is really about feeling safe enough to be fully alive and engaged. It's a state where healing happens, where you can deepen your relationships, and where you actually can feel joy and presence. And what's also important to understand here is that you don't have to be perfectly calm or blitzed out to be in that state, but you could also be facing challenges or stress but still be in that state, because you have the capacity to be with those experiences without feeling overwhelmed. The middle of the ladder is the sympathetic or fight or flight state. What it feels like emotionally is being anxious, worried, maybe irritable, angry, frustrated, restless, like you need to do something right now. What it might feel like in your body is a fast heart rate, a tight chest, a shallow breathing. You might have sweaty palms, your muscles are tensed, especially in your jaw, in your shoulders, and you might feel it in your stomach as well, like a churning stomach or butterflies in your stomach. You're fidgety and you're restless. What happens in that state is that your focus narrows to the perceived threat. So it's like you have a tunnel vision, right? You don't see peripherally. You have racing thoughts, you go into mental loops, you might snap at people, you might feel an urgent need to move, to act, to fix, or to escape a situation. So examples from daily life might be Sunday night anxiety before the work week, snapping at your partner over something that is insignificant, obsessively checking your phone, your emails, you're unable to relax even when you have free time, and you feel like you should be doing something productive all the time. What's important to understand here is that this sympathetic activation in itself isn't bad. In this state, your body is preparing you to deal with a challenge by increasing your levels of adrenaline and cortisol. And when you actually need to perform, to protect yourself, or just to handle a challenge, this state is really helpful. That's all you need. The problem is when you get stuck in that state, when your nervous system never gets a signal that the threat or the challenge is over, and you get stuck in that stress cycle loop without being able to get out of it. And that's when it turns into anxiety, chronic stress, and feeling that you always have to be on, you always have to be vigilant, and always bracing for the next thing to happen. When you're stuck in that state, it becomes really exhausting for both your mind and your body. At the bottom of the ladder, we have the dorsal vagal state, the shutdown. What it feels like emotionally is feeling numb, hopeless, depressed, disconnected, like almost like you're watching your life from behind a glass. Like you don't really care about anything, you feel apathetic, you're like, what's the point? What it might feel like in your body is you're feeling heavy, sluggy, you have extremely low energy, you have a foggy brain, you can't really feel sensations in your body, or it's very, very dulled sensations. Everything feels far away, it's hard to move, and you might sleep all the time, but you're still tired. What's also happening in that state is you might not be able to think clearly, you can't really make decisions, you can't really access memory well. You feel like you have memory loss, and it might be hard to speak and to communicate. Social interactions feels really hard, and there's just no motivation or drive to do anything. Examples of how that might show in daily life are scrolling social media for hours but not really taking in anything, binge watching TV without really enjoying it, lying in bed just staring at the ceiling, avoiding text and calls, procrastinating on everything, feeling like you're just going through the motions. So this is a state of immobilization. So it's your body's emergency brake when a situation was just too overwhelming and your body had to kind of like shut down to keep you safe from the overwhelm. And usually your body falls into that response when it felt like flying or fighting wasn't an option for you, when you couldn't escape or you couldn't fight. In the animal world, that would be like the play dead survival response. In modern life, it shows up as symptoms of depression, dissociation, chronic fatigue, numbness. And it's a state that is really exhausting as well, but in a different way than the sympathetic one. It's the exhaustion of disconnection. It's your system essentially going offline to protect you. And the problem is when you live in that state, when shutdown becomes your baseline. Because when that happens, you're not really living, you're just existing and waiting for something to change. What the polyvagal theory also gave us on top of the polyvagal ladder was that we also have blended states. So it's not as black and white as being in dorsal, sympathetic, or ventral, but we could also be in a mix of two of them. So for example, one that is really, really common in modern days is a state that is called functional freeze. And this might be relevant for a lot of you watching. It's really common. It's an activation of both the sympathetic state, so a mobilized state, and also a shutdown, so the dorsal state. And it might feel like having a foot on the gas pedal and on the brake pedal at the same time. It's like you have enough sympathetic activation to keep you moving, functioning, and doing everything you need to do. But at the same time, you you also have the dorsal shutdown active, meaning that you feel disconnected from your feelings, from your body, and just from your life. So, what it might feel like is that you're being productive, but you feel nothing. You're going through the motions, but emotionally you feel flat. You're fine, but somehow you're not really here. You can handle responsibilities, but you feel no joy. You're functioning, but you're suffering. Examples of what it would like in daily life is the high achieving woman who checks all the boxes from the outside, but inside she just feels empty. Or the capable professional who's good at her job, but she's just disconnected from her life. The person everyone thinks has it all together, who goes and cry in the toilets. It's a state where you have all you need to go to work, take care of your kids, respond to your emails, make dinner, but you do all of that while feeling absolutely nothing. You're in a protective dissociation, which allows you to function while shielding yourself from overwhelming feelings. Many of the high functioning, successful women live in that state without even realizing that they're actually in a survival state. So they might think, this is just how life is. I'm just not an emotional person. I'm just focused on getting the things done. So the person and the woman stuck in that survival state might just feel like joy isn't accessible for them, or why can't they be happy? They have everything they want in life and yet they can't feel good about it. So they might think there is something wrong with them, when it's actually just that their nervous system cannot both give them the energy to complete their to-do list, to be that successful, high-achieving person, and also have the capacity to handle all the overwhelming emotions and feelings that come with that. I will do a dedicated video on that functional freeze state, because I think it's really common, it's really misunderstood, and so many people are living in that state without even knowing it. So I think it just deserves its own topic, really. So let me know if you would be interested in that. I'm just gonna mention a few other states that exist, just so you know them. We have a state that is called the play state, which is a mix of ventral and sympathetic. So it's when you're physically active. For example, you're working out, you're dancing, you're playing sport. So you're feeling in that state, you're feeling safe and joyful, not anxious. You're mobilized, but in a good way. So it's a healthy activation. Then we have this state of stillness, which is a mix of ventral and dorsal. This is like a calm, restful immobilization. For example, in deep meditation, in restful sleep, or just like when you're resting in the grass, feeling content. It's immobilization, but safe. We also have a state of freeze, so it's different from the functional freeze that I mentioned before. That one is a mix of sympathetic and dorsal, but it's equal blend. An equal blend of the two. That means that it's kind of a deer in the headlight response, right? You've got access to a full mobilization energy, you're ready to move, but you also feel completely frozen and unable to act. So what that feels like is you want to move, but your body is just stuck. This is a state that you might have experienced when you're facing a threat situation, where you just freeze. You know you should be acting, you should be moving in a way, but you're just unable to. Then we have a state of fawn. So that is a mix of sympathetic and dorsal still. This is a people pleasing and appeasing behavior. So it usually means that you're anxious, you have a flight response activated, you're afraid of conflict, you want to run away, but simultaneously you're disconnected from your own needs, so you're in dorsal. So what you do is you avoid confrontation, you don't set boundaries, and you put others first out of fear of rejection or harm from them. So we are not gonna go deep into all of these states today, but let me know if you wanna know more on any of those states, and I can always make another video for them. I just wanted to mention them just to give you a bit more information and to show you that your nervous system, and what the polyvagal theory brought to us, is the understanding that our nervous system is much more nuanced than just being either relaxed or stressed. To summarize what I've said until this point, what I really want you to understand is that the goal of a regulated nervous system is not to be at the top of the ladder in ventral vagal 24/7. It's not realistic, and it's not even desirable. What you need is to be able to access sympathetic when you need energy, motivation, or protection, and to access dorsal when you need deep rest or restoration. The goal is flexibility. So it's being able to move between those different states fluidly without getting stuck in any of those states. A regulated nervous system might feel anxiety sometimes. It just doesn't stay stuck in that anxiety. A regulated nervous system still needs rest and withdrawal sometimes. It just doesn't collapse into chronic shutdown. Think of it like breathing. We need both the inhale, so the mobilization, and the exhale, the rest. The problem isn't the mobilization, it's getting stuck. And when you understand where you are on the ladder, it gives you important information to know how to work with your nervous system instead of against it. So, for example, you can recognize, oh, I'm in a sympathetic state right now. That means that my body needs to discharge this activation instead of thinking, oh, why am I so anxious? What's wrong with me? You can recognize, I'm in dorsal shutdown right now. My body needs gentle, safe activation. Instead of thinking, I'm so lazy, why can't I just get up and do things? This awareness alone is healing because it takes you out of self-judgment and into a compassionate understanding. So I just want to come back on that point that I mentioned before about the polyvagal theory, and one of the key awareness that it brought us, that humans are hardwired for connection. It's not something optional for us, it's actually a biological need. Your nervous system literally syncs up with other people's nervous system. So you can co-regulate, so meaning you can calm down together, or you can co-dysregulate, so get anxious together. Connection is designed to be regulating to us. It's neurobiology. This reframes our need for community and support. For myself, as an extrovert, I used to pride myself on being so self-independent. Needing support for me was a failure. I always thought I should be able to handle everything by myself, on my own. So learning about co-regulation actually changed a lot of things for me and accelerated my healing. And that's a skill that we learn as babies, because a baby cannot self-soothe. They need a calm caregiver to co-regulate them. Co-regulation in childhood teaches us how to self-regulate as adults. And if you didn't have that, if you didn't have access to that, like me, when you were a child, it makes sense that self-regulation feels impossible to you. Once I started intentionally seeking regulated people and a supportive community, my nervous system actually shifted in ways I couldn't have accomplished on my own. A bit of science of co-regulation. Your heart's electromagnetic field is the strongest in your body. When you're near someone for long enough, your heart rhythms start to sync. This is why you feel calmer around calm people and more anxious around anxious people. It's not in your head, it's physiology. So when you're around someone who's chronically anxious, angry, or depressed, your nervous system will start to match theirs. And I'm not telling you to avoid all struggling people. I'm just telling you that so you can be aware. You can ask yourself, does this person leave me feeling more grounded or more activated? This way, by being aware, you can also protect yourself and your nervous system by being intentional about who you spend extended time with. Being around a calm, grounded person helps you regulate your nervous system because their regulated state gives your nervous system permission to shift. This is why therapy works. It's not just from the talking, but actually from being in the presence of someone who is regulated. So now that you know about co-regulation, how can you use it in your life? When you're dysregulated, you might want to seek out a person who's calm, even if that means just sitting next to them. You might want to notice who in your life calms your nervous system versus who activates it. If you feel isolated, I encourage you to find a community. And that might be just on Skool, a virtual community. And you can play also with being a regulating presence for others. This will also strengthen your own regulation. So here's what I would like you to take away from that video. There is nothing wrong with your nervous system. It's just using outdated programs from past experiences. You're moving through different states every day, and getting stuck in one of those states is the problem. It's not moving through different states, and you're not meant to do this alone. Connection is neurobiology. If you've been exhausted from working on yourself, if you feel like something is still missing, even after all the personal development you've done, this is why. You're not failing, you're not bad at healing, you've just been speaking to your brain when your nervous system needed you to speak to your body. And now you have the tools, you know the language, and that changes everything. So let me know, what was your biggest light bulb moment in that video? Was it same equals safe? Was it the polyvagal ladder? Was it something else? Drop a comment and let me know what clicked for you. And if you're ready to actually do the work of regulating your nervous system, not just understanding it, I've created a Skool community where we practice somatic tools together in real time. Because here's what we learned: nervous system regulation works better when we are not doing it alone. Co-regulation is a superpower. The link to join the Skool community is down below. It's a safe space where we understand what it means to be stuck in a survival state, and we help each other come back to a state of regulation.